going to, as Cody said, we're going to focus now and spend most of our time on fields 1 and 2. And we're going to give you a simple tool on one piece of paper. We're going to call it the 411. I'll explain why in a second. So if you've already started taking notes, great. But for what I'm going to do now, you can kind of both have your notebook, but also grab a piece of paper that we put out. You can start by folding it in half, right? Like we call this, what is it, hamburger style from grade school days. You're going to make a little booklet doing that. So, and what you want to do, at the top of your book, just write 411, okay? Pretty easy, and I'll explain it in a second, but we're going to read a passage to kind of give us that, what we're actually doing here. And that passage you could write underneath is Matthew 28, 18 to 20. I'll write it down here so you guys can see. Okay, so 411, Matthew 28, 18 to 20. Does somebody want to read that once you have written it? Go ahead and find that passage and read it. Great job. Okay, well, what if you had to boil that down to like the one thing Jesus is telling his disciples? What would be the biggest center kind of idea? Go, yeah. Go and make disciples. So we found, that's a big concept. All right, go out there. How do we break that down? Found helpful to get started to answer 4 questions, which is where we get this 411, right? So the first question we're going to answer, I guess I should write under that. Again, this is your paper right here that I got on the board, but make disciples. But the first question that we want to be crystal clear on is why. Why do we make disciples? So you can write that. Again, this will be the last. You'll write that on the front of your page. Why do we make disciples? Then you're going to open up your book. Inside front cover, right? The next question we want to talk about is who. Who has God called us to reach? So I wrote that there. That's who. Okay? And in a second, I'll make sure you'll get with your training buddy, make sure we got all this all on the same page. Then if you go to the next page, on this side, we're going to say what? What are we supposed to say to start reaching people, right? And then the back page, back cover of the book is when. When are we going to do it? So we call this the 411 because it's 4 questions, right, on one piece of paper, and it takes about 1 hour. Where we get that name. So Matthew 28, 18 to 20 tells us to make disciples. We're going to answer over the next hour 4 questions that will give us all just the tools we need to start that process of reaching people. So go ahead and turn to your training buddy and make sure that they got their book set up right. Okay, so we don't have anybody off on the right book, and then we'll jump right in. But just double check with your training buddy. Okay. So we're going to then, right now, I'm going to draw, this is the front. I'm going to draw this, well, I'm not going to use this paper because it's small. I'm going to draw it up here, but you can draw the same thing along, and you're going to then turn and practice after I do it with your training buddy, because it's really important to get this why down. Otherwise, it can become something that's just not even for the right reason, right? We're doing something that God calls us to do for the wrong reason. So why? Well, we see Jesus calls us to, but there's another key part of it, and it's our identity. You can write identity down here. And we see some of our identity in 2 Corinthians 5, 17 to 21. So you can write that identity, 2 Corinthians 5, 17 to 21. Let's have another volunteer read that passage. Yeah, go for it, Danny.
Okay, I'm going to read it. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, the new is here. All this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ, and gave us the ministry of reconciliation, that God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting people's sins against them. He has committed to us the message of reconciliation. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. We implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God.
All right, so there's a whole lot in there. We could like give a good 45-minute sermon right there. We're going to keep it a little shorter. What's one thing? In verse 17, there's a really key thing that's true about us because of Jesus. Who sees it? Right, so I'm going to write verse 17, and I'm going to write new. And here's your fancy artwork for the day. You're going to draw a person, and you can draw them all shiny, right? They're a new creation. Because of Jesus, we're new creations. That's part of our identity. If we've turned in faith to Jesus and are walking with him, we are a new creation. But there's something else. I think it's in verse 20. What else is true about us in this passage, also because of Jesus? Ambassadors, right? Okay. So, same meaning then as it has today. What does an ambassador do? If we have an ambassador in the U.S. and we send them to France, what do?
Represent.
Yep, they represent, literally, like they're representing our country to France, right? And specifically, obviously, government to government. But that's the same idea. So who are we representing to who? Because we're the ambassadors here. We're representing Christ to the world. So you can draw a circle with a few land masses. Feel free to try to get South America in there if you want. But there's Australia, maybe. I don't know. Whatever would communicate the world, right? Just a picture to go, hey, we're ambassadors to the world. So this is key to our identity. As believers, as followers of Jesus, can we be made new, can we be made new but not be ambassadors, if I cover this up? In this passage? In this passage, it ties them both together, right? When we're a new creation, we're also made ambassadors. For a lot of my life, it was easy to just be new. I'm excited about that, but I'm actually believing this identity and living it out, that I'm called to be an ambassador to the world, whoever God's given me, right? And same way, we wouldn't want someone to go share and be an ambassador if they haven't been made new. They need to accept that as well, right? So these two things go together. So this is the why. The first question we want to answer. Why do we do this? It's actually because it's core to who we are. As followers of Jesus, we're a new creation, and we're also ambassadors. So what I want you to do, again, we're just getting some reps in because we're actually going to give you this tool, this 411. We're going to encourage you to take it to someone else outside of this building to teach them. So practice this with your training buddy, all right? Pretend they haven't heard it. You don't need to read the whole passage. Just say, hey, we read 2 Corinthians 5. What do you see in there? But basically, either redraw this out or retrace it on your sheet to practice this exact piece on the front page, right? And then I can't remember who next. Danny, I think, will come do the who next. But right now, we're going to just practice that why with your training buddy.